Assassin's Creed Shadows is upon us, and I figured that now would be a perfect time as any to start discussing certain aspects of the future games to see how maybe the story of Assassin's Creed could be impacted moving forward. Now, whether or not you guys have been excited for the release of Assassin's Creed Shadows, or whether you guys have been paying attention to all the controversy that has been accrued over the past several months, if you guys are still planning on playing the game, by all means, I highly encourage you guys to go ahead and form your own opinions. You know, don't get dissuaded by anyone necessarily spouting some information online, whether it's true or not. It's always important to form your own opinions on something, right? If you guys want to play the game, if you guys love the setting, give it a shot. Who knows? It might end up being one of those games that has kind of like a guilty pleasure for you to play, or maybe it's just an amazing game overall, which I do hope so because I do really like the series. But let's get started. Today, if you guys do enjoy this video, make sure you guys go ahead and drop a like and the like button down below, and make sure to turn on the notification bell icon as well to stay up to date with more videos like this one. So, the topic of today's video is going to be Assassin's Creed's modern day story, and more so, does it even still have a place in the Assassin's Creed franchise? So I know that this might accrue a little bit of some small controversy here, given the nature of the fact that the series was built on the modern day story, right? The whole essence of the games, the excuse, the justification for us to be able to relive the ancestors' memories is because in the modern day, we were reliving the memories of the ancestors down the bloodline of Desmond Miles. At least that's how it was from Assassin's Creed 1 all the way to Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, where even after Desmond died in AC3, we were still reliving his ancestors' memories in the bloodline of Edward Kenway, just through the eyes of an Asturgo employee, right? So, moving forward, after the events of Assassin's Creed 4, Assassin's Creed Unity and onwards, the modern day story kind of started to take a little bit more of a backseat. We really hit like a peak with Assassin's Creed 4 when we realized that they were still using Desmond's body just to harvest his genetic material and use it in their programs to get the information that they needed from the past. And we really didn't get to see the implications of it all. There was a big ongoing story in Assassin's Creed 3. For those of you guys who have played that game, the way that the game ends up in the modern day story is that basically there's like the whole disaster of the world ending in 2012. Desmond Miles sacrifices himself and gives his life in order to avert the disaster, buying humanity some extra time, but in the process releasing Juno, who was one of the Isu who wanted to basically enslave humanity all over again. And so with her being released, we were supposed to be continuing that plot thread forward as the assassins now have to continue the fight against the Templars, but without Desmond, who was the chosen one in a way, and also against the Templar army. So with all that being said, Assassin's Creed 4 was kind of like a fluff in terms of the modern day. It didn't really know how to address the story moving forward. We didn't even get to play as anyone from the main cast of characters from Assassin's Creed 1 to 3, but we did interact with them here and there. However, the implications that the story actually ended up having were not really any grand implications at all whatsoever, because you actually see everything from the perspective of an Abstergo employee. So it's not that you are actually a character that gets to do something to move the plot forward. Rather, you're just a reactionary character who just gets to sit back and see the plot unfold, and you don't really have any control over it. So after Assassin's Creed 4, when we reached AC Unity, the next thing you know, AC Unity is bringing up how now the assassins are bringing in all these initiates, how they're trying to bring more people into their cause, and the key to helping stop Juno and the Isu threat is by gathering the body of a sage and then using that in the efforts to go ahead and stop Juno's plans. Because obviously Juno, the whole point of what Juno wants to do is to go ahead and reincarnate her lover from the original games. He wasn't a character in the original games, but he was a character that she did speak of in the original games, just to bring him into the modern day. And obviously, moving past Assassin's Creed Unity, a lot of people, even though as divisive as the game was, and as great as we look back on the game now, it is also important for us to recognize that in Assassin's Creed Unity, the modern day didn't do anything at all. We did everything in the game, reliving the memories of Arnaud Victor Dorian from the French Brotherhood in order to be able to get an idea on where the sage was. And when you finally find his body, it turns out that there's no genetic material there, or the body was just destroyed and decomposed far beyond any aspects of being able to obtain any genetic material. So it really was kind of a slap to the face, where at the very end of the game, aside from the fact that Unity was the first AC game that started this ongoing trend of no playable modern game, at least for that mid-era in the 2010s, it didn't really do anything to advance the plot at all. And it just felt more like an excuse to play in the past as a different assassin, which kind of opened the floodgates to Does Assassin's Creed even need the modern day? Or better yet, is the modern day even still relevant? So fast forward a little bit past Unity and we get into Syndicate. With the release of Assassin's Creed Syndicate, we had the whole modern day story where we were once again back with Rebecca and Sean as they were also in England, this time trying to find the Shroud of Eden, which has the capability of reviving deceased people. And so a lot of people were thinking, well, maybe they're going to go ahead, grab the Shroud, take it to Desmond, revive Desmond, and then suddenly he's back into the main story. That was kind of like the last spark that a lot of us as fans at the time kind of had hope that would go on in order to maybe get the series back on track modern day story-wise to see where they would go from there. But instead what ended up happening was that they teamed up with Galena. They tried to go ahead and recover the Shroud, only for it to be that they couldn't get it in time. And the Templars ended up getting the Shroud. They used it to go ahead and try to rebuild a Isu body or something like that, I believe, using one of the facilities that the Templars have. And I believe it was like a sect of the Templars that were working with Juno at the time, and the majority of the Templars didn't even know that this was going on. And at the very end of Assassin's Creed Syndicate, you actually get to see the cutscene where Juno was actually communicating with one of the scientists all along, and about how she was going to use that vessel or that body to inhabit a physical form and then try to go ahead and wreak havoc that way. However, we never really got the resolution to that. And I feel like that was the biggest bombshell that was dropped when Assassin's Creed Origins, the next game that was released 2 years later in 2017, came out. We were presented with a completely different modern day story. It was playable, sure. A lot of fans had been asking and begging for the modern day to be playable once more. But when we got to the story, we got presented to a brand new character who had nothing to do with the previous cast of characters at all. Layla Hassan, for all intents and purposes, was our brand new version of Desmond Miles. Except this time around, she was a little bit more trained and skilled, whereas to Desmond was just a bartender who just got kidnapped. But Layla Hassan actually was an Abstergo employee, and she actually managed to build her own version of the Animus in order to go and access the memories of Bayek of Siwa. However, in the Assassin's Creed lore, it was stated that the Animus could only go back so long before the memory fragmentation is just too great, and then you're just speculating as to what happened instead of actually reliving true memories. But Layla in Assassin's Creed Origins, the big thing about her is that she had discovered a way to go ahead and expand that so that she can clearly be able to identify the memories of Bayek of Siwa and therefore relive them. All that is well and good, except for the fact that they never addressed the aspect of Juno coming back in the games ever again. As a matter of fact, it gets resolved in an off-brand comic book. Not an off-brand comic book per se, not to discredit them at all. It's a great story, but it's just the fact that it was done in a separate medium aside from the one that it was literally created in. Like, imagine starting a story on, I don't know, in a video game, and then you try to go ahead and you're building up, like, imagine Halo 1 and 2. You're building up to, like, you know, Master Chief fighting the Prophets and all that, and then Halo 3 never comes out, and instead you get the Halo show on, I don't know, let's say this comes out in an alternate universe over on Netflix or something, and it finishes the story there. Well, it's not going to be the same audience. It's going to feel really strange. Same thing with Assassin's Creed. You start the story that you're building over the course of a bunch of games, a bunch of years, in your video game format, and then you finish it off in a comic book. It doesn't rub off the same way, and it really leads us to ask ourselves, well, where do they go from here? What is the whole point of having this brand new story? So with the new cast of characters with Layla Hassan, at the end of Assassin's Creed Origins, she ends up teaming up with William Miles, Desmond's father, and once more, Sean and Rebecca come back into the fray as well, and then they kind of team up together to try to go ahead and uncover other pieces of Eden before the Templars do. So at this point, it kind of opens the door to, we're no longer trying to solve a specific story thread, but rather, where will all these pieces of Edens be around the globe, and what kind of excuse can we form in order to relive the memories of a different assassin at a different time period? Because all the assassins after Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag no longer have anything to do with Desmond. Every single last one of them are completely different bloodlines, with the exception of a few that are linked here and there. For example, you have Bayek of Siwa, who he himself is not connected to any of the other bloodlines. However, Aya, his wife, or Amunet, how you might know her if you played Assassin's Creed 2, she is in the same bloodline as Alexios or Cassandra from Assassin's Creed Odyssey, depending on which story you go with. And that is the connection to the very first assassin that was also in the Assassin's Creed Odyssey DLC, or at least the very first one to use a hidden blade, right? Darius. So, moving on from there, we end up asking ourselves, Assassin's Creed is kind of just using its justification of the lore just to globetrot different eras and time periods and different characters, and it's no longer feeling like a consistent trilogy. You're no longer getting your Ezio trilogy games. You're no longer getting your Altair duology game. But I digress, right? You're no longer getting those consistent stories. The Connor Kenway, Haytham Kenway, and Edward Kenway story is kind of like a weird way of doing a trilogy because it's not necessarily the same character, but it is their immediate bloodline, right? Like it's immediately like father, son to grandson, and then you kind of continue the story from there. But right now, Assassin's Creed is kind of just in the middle of nowhere, and with the newest release of Assassin's Creed Shadows, we really have to ask ourselves, what does Assassin's Creed want to do? Enter Assassin's Creed Infinity, known as their hub that we had known about for a few years now. It had been leaked all the way back, where the whole idea of the Assassin's Creed Infinity hub is a hub where we would separate the stories. No longer would it be that you would jump into a game and suddenly have the modern day story be mixed or intertwined with the actual past events in the Animus itself. Now with AC Infinity, the whole point of that platform is that it's going to mimic the Animus interface, right? So kind of like how the original Assassin's Creed kind of tried to do with its main menu and even the HUD elements as well, where everything was supposedly being viewed via the Animus. Assassin's Creed Infinity is trying to do that, except it's using that as an excuse to make it so that when you play the actual game set in the past and in those time periods, there are no modern day elements. It is literally just you reliving the memories of those characters. So it's purely in the past, or at least that's what they're trying to do moving forward, right? So theoretically, we think Assassin's Creed Shadows and onwards. I might be wrong. I'm not saying that that's exactly the case, but that is the idea that's been floating around. Now, with this being the case, another idea that they've also been floating around is that Assassin's Creed moving forward, at least for the modern day, they would have their own section in the AC Infinity Hub where you would be able to play the modern day. So for those of you modern day story fans, you would theoretically be able to purely play that storyline. And this is something that would, I guess, be updated on the platform as it moves on. I don't want to compare it to this other platform necessarily because the Call of Duty HQ is not exactly the best or the gold standard when it comes to these kinds of platforms, but that is essentially kind of what they're trying to do. Now, we do have some footage, given the people who had early access to Assassin's Creed Shadows, of what the AC Infinity Hub is going to look like, seen as to how it's going to be releasing later on this year. However, it also, again, continues to raise the question. With Assassin's Creed splitting the stories from the past and the modern day, is the modern day even something they really want to finish? Is it something that they truly want to continue a story for? Or are we just going to go ahead and use it as an excuse to get your cheap throws here and there, but it's really more of an excuse just to go ahead and continue the series as it is? Because if you get rid of the modern day, yeah, you can still have a great game set in the past, but it's not really Assassin's Creed now, is it? Because Assassin's Creed has always been about the modern day struggle and to fight the threats that we face in today's day and age, where we have to go ahead and learn the skills via the bleeding effect of our ancestors in the past. And if you kind of get rid of the whole modern day element, you still have an Assassin's Creed game, don't get me wrong. I mean, there have been several games that did that. Just look at the games like Assassin's Creed Mirage, which managed to go ahead and for the most part give you an entire game story worth, even though it was a smaller title, but set entirely in the past. It is something that they've done before. It is something that they've been experimenting, and it only feels like with the introduction of Assassin's Creed Infinity being a hub, that this is really going to be them testing the waters to see how much fans actually really do want to play the modern day versus how much fans really do want to play games set in the past, which is going to be the grand majority, because a lot of us buy those games because we want to experience that different era that we could only imagine or we've only ever heard in the history books. So with that being said, does Assassin's Creed really stand a chance at continuing for the foreseeable future? Can they go ahead and continue as a brand without any sort of direction in the main plot thread moving forward? These are the questions that we should be asking, and these are the questions that I'm going to be asking you guys. I do want to hear what you guys get to think about all of this. Please let me know exactly how you guys feel about all this. Do you guys like, and are you guys excited for the brand new Assassin's Creed Infinity Hub and Assassin's Creed Shadows to that extent? Please let me know in the comment section down below, and if you guys did enjoy these kinds of videos, also let me know. I do plan on making a few more of these as well. And guys, I will see you guys all in the next video. Peace out.